Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sydney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych.Club, from the Tom Numbers Show. Top of your game and news with Tom Numbers, and I've got Juanito 107, who's at the top of his game. In the he looks like he's enjoying the sun or the shade, but more sunny than it's here in England anyway.
Well, it's been lousy here for the last several days. Today's first nice day out for I think last 5 or 6 days actually. So it's beautiful here right now.
It looks nice. Yeah, it's been a bit choppy here. Well, rain, bit of sun, cloud, overcast, mist, rain. Yeah, the whole shebang.
It gets the grass growing, gets the trees green. It's
That's it.
nothing wrong with that.
It's ready for
if it was all one kind of weather all the time, it wouldn't be as fun. That's what it's like under the cap there in Antarctica. You never have a rainy day. No storms, no sunshine.
That's it. Juan, I saw a thing on Twitter just not long ago, actually. It looks like President Trump has put out he's been reported as saying if he doesn't get in this election, that it will be a bloodbath and it will affect the world and then obviously America. I just wondered if you've got any thoughts or commentary on that. But some people are looking maybe further into it, what he means by that, other than just an election. Is he talking about other things?
Well, I mean, are we? I think it would be naive to think that if this continues the way it is right now, just the general direction that America and the world are sliding, that it wouldn't be a bloodbath. Look, with what's going on in Ukraine, the West has been sucked in by a deep state community whose interests are to drag Europe into war. They've done it several times in the last couple of centuries, but this one is got the potential to be worse than any of those that have gone before. World Economic Forum spent $10 billion, $1 billion a year, fomenting a orange revolution in Ukraine, in the Donbass. And as a result of that, we now have what you see here. And the corruption going on in that region is just astronomical. And you have all these political crime families who, through their children and wives and various connections, are all profiting by the money laundering through the Ukraine down into the Mideast and out across the world. And so to think that can continue forever is just it's silly. I mean, the way they're beating each other's heads in between Russia and Ukraine, Russia can't back down. Part of the reason they went in there was because of the biolabs that were aimed at the Russian people. Think about that. What, you're just going to stand there and let them make biological weapons that are aimed at your people that could subtly come in and just kill off Russia and the Russian people primarily, and nobody's going to do anything about it?
Well, it's interesting that the numbers, I hadn't done them, but
when Trump's saying what he's saying, he's not just talking from some super secret knowledge. He's talking from a position that any person who's thinking using their brain out here across the West should be able to come to the same conclusion with a simple analysis. On our side, shortly after Biden came into office, I think it was April or May, late April, we had the unrequested just posting on the on the Strategic Command website, and it said, if a force is about to be overrun and use of conventional weapons will not deter, use of tactical nukes is authorized. And that's when people were questioning, was Biden really in control with his finger on the button? And before Russia invaded Ukraine. And in the course of, that's when they're doing a big test out in, largest maneuver, if you will, it's World War II, right, out there on the border of Ukraine. And so, the whole world is watching that we're right on the brink of some kind of a calamity there in Europe. Then all you got to do is go down and look at what's going on off the East Africa, the dramas that are going on there. We got 50, 60 warships down there running missions 24 hours a day over Yemen and getting involved in a fight there again. You've got a huge issue going on over off Taiwan. We now know that there's Green Berets, which are unique special forces out of our U.S. military, three positioned in the islands off the coast of Taiwan. Should China decide they want to come in and do something there in Taiwan, we got half our carrier fleet, positioned in striking range of China right now. Here domestically inside the United States, we're literally seeing an invasion of unimaginable magnitude. Nobody could conceive of the numbers of people coming over the border and being flown into the United States by our own government in this invasion of America. And then now the Haiti thing. And they're going to move them to the area just outside of the Gitmo prison, but in that facility. By the way, Dominican Republic is moving Haitians out of the country by force. They don't want them there because they don't want to be destabilized by the same gangs that have, run roughshod across Haiti. And so what are they going to do with them as they get them there? They're going to process them and put them on daily flights, flying them up into the U.S., all over the whole U.S. The same people that are causing this disruption in Haiti. You've got the drug crisis. The drug crisis alone is enough to take down the American economy, which to the younger generation, the threat. You don't even have to have a biological weapon hit America. The drug weapon that's destroying America's younger generation is almost incomprehensible. So on every kind of a front that you can imagine, and by the way, the last one that was in play when we took down the Soviet Union was the monetary system, the ruble. And we collapsed the ruble. Doesn't mean it went to zero, doesn't mean it stayed there forever. But they got to a very desperate situation as we pushed rubles back into the country that we pulled out. We didn't counterfeit anything. We didn't violate any international law. But that brought down the ruble 40% in a matter of months. And had Gorbachev not called Bush and worked an arrangement where Gorbachev agreed to take the guards off the wall and step back from the wall in Germany, they could have gone, to the ruble being worth, 10% of what it was a year earlier. They were headed for some imminent disaster. The monetary system in the West is about to suffer some huge stresses, and wealth is going to go to other places. You don't destroy wealth, you just concentrate in other places when you have these types of events. Take it out of one hand and put it in other hands and concentrate somewhere. So with that in mind, we're on the verge of some kind of an existential crisis across the West, and that'll affect the whole world. And then Trump, had he been put into office as president or continued in office as president, would all or most of this be happening right now? Elections have consequences. Would Trump have presided over the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline or allowed it to happen? Would he have allowed the destruction in Ukraine, this battle in Ukraine, to continue to develop because of the crime families, Western crime families, doing what they were doing to destabilize it. At the very least, would he have allowed him to do it undeterred without a fight happening to try and slow him down or block him? Because remember, a lot of that continued during the Trump administration, but it was being exposed, it was being pushed against, trying to unravel it. Would this immigrant invasion be happening the way it is right now? I don't think so. And the drugs coming in, Trump was, fighting against it, but, like pushing back against the tide. Once Trump was out of the way, all that buildup that was dammed up just got released. It didn't get stopped. It just got released in a surge, and that's what we're going through right now. So when Trump says, if he isn't back to deter, slow down, go after the people behind this, then he's probably right. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. He's not trying to convey some super secret knowledge that nobody would know but him. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, it does. One, and it's interesting. You must have probably picked up on it, but the bloodbath is 79, which comes to Ukraine. Also, it comes to William, and I was talking to a friend of ours. We both know Charlie, and I was talking to Charlie this afternoon, and he's doing all right. Had a bit of work out in Dubai, but he's fine. He told me that apparently there's going to be the news networks here in the UK, probably maybe some of the US ones, but the TV networks like BBC, ITV, Channel 4 have been put on notice to maybe make an announcement from Buckingham Palace in the next few days, maybe next 48, 72 hours, perhaps. Anything with that? Because you've got this whole thing with Kate and William and what's happened with Kate's photos, and there seems to be painting some kind of picture about Kate. It's got maybe echoes of Diana. I'm just wondering what's the reality of that.
I do know some things about that. I think as a courtesy, I want to kind of go easy on that, but the mischief that occurs behind the scenes, that seems to be endemic with so many people in powerful positions, and the relationships. You have it out through the rest of society. It's just that more people maybe are aware of or paying attention in the private lives of the royals and like that. And, I don't. There's no pleasure in seeing trauma for people that live, in the fishbowl like that. And so, it's painful to watch, and I think I'd rather just let that come out the way it's through other places. It does affect us as a society, both in England, across the world, the Commonwealth countries, the US, because certainly people in powerful positions have influence over our daily lives, at least, remotely at some level. And maybe from a country standpoint, for example, the drama going on in America with the Biden debacle, a person who's barely able to function mentally, let alone physically, being in a position of authority, arguably the most powerful position in the free world, and the whole world suffers the consequence of him being in office. And then the philandering nature of his presentations around other persons, that's embarrassing. It takes you have to have a kind of a national pride in your leadership, because they're supposed to represent you your best, your brightest, your you know, most, all the best things about you with the leadership. And yet across the world, once again, we seem to go through these cycles where, for example, Macron in France, and the bizarre things that are being revealed about, you know, who he is, who his wife is, he, she, it. But we have the same thing here in America. Look, you had a guy masquerading as a woman. They throw makeup on the moose, and then we're supposed to just accept it to what they tell us is true. And then we're supposed to just pretend that the king has beautiful clothes on, and that we're all good with it. And this is your leadership. Look, if you have to accept a lie in your face like that, how many other lies are you, accepting? Because to speak the truth is dangerous, not just a problem, dangerous. And as these things come out, is it dangerous to even be around some of these people? How many people died around the Clintons? How many people have died around the Biden lies and the Obama lies, let alone stuff that's happening right there in England? And I don't have to go into specifics. And around the world, as people have tried to push back on some of these things. We're in a precarious moment out across the world. And then even within the audiences that we talk to, there's a lot of pushback. You see it in the comments and in the community. Like somehow we're supposed to just not a little bit. We're supposed to just accept whatever's thrust upon us as though it's for our good. And these leaders are looking at our best interests. Are they really? The propaganda, the Fifth Avenue campaign, everything that we have to accept. Look at even the holidays we celebrate around the West are actually based in some kind of a cult system that for all of us we're supposed to accept. It's a church thing, or it's Thanksgiving. It's a good thing for here in the West, for people, just families, to get together and celebrate what we have. And then you start finding out that there's occult things. Even our election day here in the West is based on the blood or the sacrifice day, where any animals you aren't going to keep through the winter, that's your slaughter day. And so we do our election based on when the slaughter day is in the old occult practices here in the West. And we do our elections on that day. That's the day that we choose. That's just some kind of wild, insane thing. And we're doing it. I could just go through, Easter, Aoster. That has nothing to do with the death and resurrection of Jesus. And churches celebrate all the time. In the Old Testament, Ezekiel, the prophet, was caught up in the spirit, and he saw what was going on inside the temple grounds. And inside the temple grounds, the priests had been corrupted. Out on the street, out in the community, oh, they're holy men of God, and they're of the family of Aaron, and these are the great men before God that are providing the sacrifices to God. But behind the temple wall, where nobody could see them, they were turning their ass to the throne of God, the seat of God, in this biblical, the Old Testament sense. And they were bowing to the rising sun, which is the Osiris Horus tale, okay, the Babylonian tale, which Easter is based around. And what were they doing? Bowing to the rising sun, bowing to Horus, the sun god. What do Western churches do on Easter? Astarte. They go and have a morning sunrise service, supposedly about Christ, but even the date's not right. It's not 3 days afterwards, Good Friday and all that. They've convoluted things. You're participating in an occult ceremony, but thinly veiled under, oh no, it's church stuff, it's God in heaven stuff. And we just accept it. In the political world, you're being sold a bill of goods about who these people are, what their interests are. Why do you have, let's say transgenderism? Why are such a high percentage of the people in high public office involved in these bizarre sexual relationships, and they reach all the way to the pinnacle of power, and they do their business between each other to mutually self-enrich. Again, I go back to, you got the Obamas with a man masquerading as a woman, got the same thing with Macron, and you have others that you haven't heard the names of doing similar stuff, both in the political and the business world. How come that is? It's because they have their little secret clubs and societies, and they're mutually self-promoting. And some of them are more obvious. The royals, bloodline families, right to rule by blood. Why? What basis? That represents the rest of us? That's representative government? That's representative people in charge? No, it's a bloodline thing, and you see it in the hyper wealthy families also, where for example, Zuckerberg, Facebook. Zuckerberg didn't invent Facebook. That was a DARPA operation. We can go and look at the books and see where it was. It was called LifeLog. 98, the proposal was written to get control of the emerging social media front. And then 99, 100 million a year was set aside in the DARPA budget to develop a social media platform called LifeLog to work through the bugs. Took them 100 million over 5 years. February 4th, 2004, LifeLog was shut down inside the DARPA Defense Advanced Research Program. And at the same time, at noon on the same day, February 4th, 2004, Facebook is created by Zuckerberg. Bullshit. Think about it. And then you're supposed to just accept that. The whole world is accepting a ruse, a lie that came out of the military-industrial complex. If they can create a Zuckerberg and give him something worth hundreds of billions of dollars, who made him king? How was he chosen? What bloodline is he from? And all the people around him, who knew you should have your investment in Facebook, you're going to make billions. And then don't forget to invest in just the right people and projects and do mutual business between each other so you can help control the conversations out across the world as part of the club. I don't care what platform you're talking about. The people running them didn't get there through normal business competition processes. That's the problem. And then to all the rest of us, we're supposed to just accept that this happened naturally. No, these are people behind the scenes working together, mutually self-promoting and protecting. And then you have someone like Trump saying, we've reached a point now where it's so out of balance, so skewed, that if he doesn't get back in and help to bring this back under control, weed it out, Trump's position, he's here to preside over. This is a tough one, but I've said this before he even announced he was running for president. Trump is here to preside over the bankruptcy of America. The financial crisis that's coming will weed out a lot of these families, these players, these things that are going on, and show those relationships, show the corruption. And a good bankruptcy judge, when a bankruptcy judge comes in and is presented with all the various sides, if he's an honest judge and a good judge, what he does is he tries to find the original people who were the investors, who put in real assets, real labor to do something, and it was intelligent and made sense. Those that were frauded, and those that were just padding the bill, there was deceit in what they said they could do or were going to do business wise, or where they diverted assets, etc., to not convey the assets to them. And so that's the crisis for America. How does Trump do that? How does he get back in power to complete this process? Because when you do have a proper bankruptcy, you take a non-performing asset and try to restructure it to perform again or move it into other hands, so that those that have been denied the benefit get their, original investment back, or as close as you can get to it, less what was fool's gold, etc. And that's what's still ahead. I sing the song, 2020, it's not over yet. And it isn't. That's the other thing. Let me just drone on for a second here longer, Tom, before we get into more. But the filing here in the U.S. that was kind of subtle, and it's part two. This is a multi-part series of what's going to expose the specifics of the election fraud here in the West that put Biden in office. And not, by the way, the presidency is not just one person or a vice president, the president, or something like that. It's thousands of people who then get cherry picked again. Whoever's the, person that gets in there, they get to, pick judges and friends of judges and law firms and defense contractors and all sorts of things. And, which types of farming or medicine or other things get, government contracts. And it's 1,000 little things that you don't even necessarily see. It's just the flow, the direction of government, which channels, get the water. And so this course of history has been diverted, because if the election was fraudulent, which it was, by the way, and it's becoming more and more apparent, you can live in a bubble and pretend that it's not true and everything else. That thin bubble is about to be burst. It's being burst even as we sit here, Tom. The filing that was done at the Supreme Court the other day on the Kerry Lake case, the information was technically not new. It came from multiple places, multiple filings by multiple people. You have Tina Peters up in Colorado, who allowed access to her Dominion vote machine to do a before and after a trusted build. And then the key data in there was used for comparative analysis with what statements were made by people outside the country. That hasn't been made apparent yet. There'll be declarations filed and like that to start to build that out. In this case, that's in the Supreme Court right now. There's other people that have done beautiful work. By the way, Tor Mars, she's a fantastic person. I know that there's some people that want to say mean things about her, but because she did work for Brennan at one time, but it was very minimal. And she was president in the elections in Iraq. She knows in Iraq and Afghanistan. She knows how the deeds are done. And so her insights and her information, she's going to be heard more clearly as time goes on. And many of the other people, Pat Byrne, by the way, let me just pause for a second. Everybody in this audience would be extremely well served. Spend a couple of dollars, get it online, or order the book out of Amazon by Patrick Byrne, Bryne, Danger Close. And by the way, that title was picked by Mike Flynn, suggested to Patrick Byrne. before this is all over, he's going to be continuing to emerge as one of the great heroes of the West. He was not a Trump fan, was not a big Trump supporter. He's got an amazing history, and he's put most of his wealth into trying to expose what's happened in this capturing of the Western political system. Just a sharp guy. He's a great ally. And if you think you know who he is because you heard a couple of people talk about him, or even a little piece of an interview somewhere or something, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice if you haven't actually read one of his books, where he kind of lays bare his history and who he is and how he got where he's at, and how he understands and sees the world and the people around him, his life experience. This latest book, Danger Close, it's inexpensive, it's a fast read, and it's worth every penny. You can waste your time on fiction and oh, that's interesting, wow, that's a good plot twist and everything else. Read the real stuff and find out what reality is, and it's truth is stranger than fiction. So it was funny the other day, he and I were both on something. We were discussing an urgent situation, and I never asked where he was at, he never asked where I was at, and we're halfway across the world, and we're literally a couple hundred feet from each other in the same city on the other side of the planet. And he's moving pretty quick, I'm moving pretty quick, and here we're talking for 2-3 days, and all I had to do is walk out in the hall and go down the hall, literally probably 150 feet. There he'd be. We probably passed each other 10 times and just missed each other by seconds, doing what we were doing, and didn't realize we're both in the same city, way off in the distance. But I would really urge, I know there's so many things pulling on people time-wise and everything else. Danger Close, please. Because you can't even talk about the current politics in the world and where we're at and what's going on, I don't think, without having that knowledge. And it will become more important as time goes on. You meet with people and talk about at work, a party, something else. Why not be informed with real information, as opposed to innuendo or guessing? He's telling you his actual personal real experiences getting to this point. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, that little side thing. Yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, so we've got the eclipse coming up in a couple of weeks, maybe just over a couple of weeks away. April 8th.
April 8th.
Yeah, April 8th.
And it's eclipse across America. You have eclipses all over the planet. This one just happens to be across America on April 8th. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, and it completes an X, so it had the same, had a trajectory in the other direction in 2017. But thoughts on that one? The eclipse, it seems.
Well, it's actually 3 eclipses. It's not just 2.
Yeah, there's another, isn't there?
This is the third eclipse moving across America. Now, what's interesting about these eclipses, it just so happens that the eclipses were across a path of states and locations where they had unique names. And Sheila Holm, Holm, she's talked about this extensively, and she's a close friend. And in fact, I'll be seeing her tomorrow. And we saw each other out at Mar-a-Lago the other day for an event that was out there. She's talked extensively about this. I don't think I want to duplicate that, because she does a better job and has done the research. But what I would say there is that the cities that the eclipse crossed previously all had Salem in the name. In this path. It was just bizarre that these cities were located along a path that the eclipse follows. And then in the current one, the cities that it passes are all Nineveh, or this just continue. You know, it seems bizarre. Now you have to remember that these things like eclipses, you can forecast out where the next eclipse is for, you know, thousands of years into the future.
Mhm.
And so there's been knowledge of this eclipse path literally for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so in the background, the question is it natural that all of these locations were just occurred where these cities were located along this eclipse path? Or was it by some kind of design? And then the question is, if it's by design, is it human design or even some spiritual element, some group or something working behind the scenes trying to make a statement or something like that? So it's just kind of fun speculation, but there does appear to be, with the timing, um, events in the stars and the sky above and things like that. Uh, uh, there does, you know, Shakespeare talks about it. That events in the heavens are mimicked on the earth. Even the Bible. Look, there was the Star of Bethlehem, and the Magi out of Persia, out of modern day Iran area, came down to the Mideast, to Israel, because they recognized that this sign in the sky, and by the way, Persia was where Daniel was at. Okay. Persia is where Daniel went from Babylon into Persia. And this whole area where Esther and everything else was, this huge area, that area had prophetic men that were present. Remember, Daniel was part of a group of men that had prophetic insight, and they had recorded things about the Jews and other people, what would be going on out into the future for them. So the Magi were the recipients of knowledge that goes back to Daniel and before. And they saw this celestial event and identified it as having to do with the arrival of the king, a new bloodline king of the Jewish people, some resurgence of that family, the Abrahamic family. And so they came down to find this child that had been born, not because there was a rumor mill on the earth, but because of stuff they saw in the sky. So when we see celestial events, is it some kind of a marker that we're supposed to recognize from God? And then, by the way, from the occult side, many of these groups, you'll see these political and wealth families and groups, they'll follow eclipses around the world because they believe they get magical power in the presence of the eclipse. And there is actually, by the way, Tom, there is actually physical, measurable physical changes in the physics during eclipses. Depending on the type of an eclipse, when Venus crosses the path of the sun, we can measure it. It's very, very real, and it changes. It's a hyperphysical event outside of normal three-dimensional physics, and but very, very measurable, and it's not woo-woo or, you know, some, you know, spiritual sixth sense thing that actually changes the way the physics operates in three dimensions. And so with that in mind, with combined, let's say, ancient knowledge or knowledge from the spirit world, if you will, people know that they can capture, they believe they can capture energy during those types of events that you can't capture at other times. Uh, just to barely touch on it, because I know there's people sitting there thinking about it, is the speed of light the speed limit for energy moving in a three-dimensional world. No, it isn't. If you have a fourth dimension or a fifth dimension. And so is it folded space and other stuff? No, it's subspace. And the reason I say that is because what's the smallest thing that we can see and measure in three dimensions? It's the electron. Okay. What's the smallest measurement? 2 widths of an electron, the Planck length. And why is that? Because it's so tiny that hypothetically, the Planck length is, if an electron is static, it's not moving at all, it's not emitting energy, it's not gaining energy, you couldn't see it. But if it moves 1 width from here to here, then there would have to be a electrical discharge. There would have to be a magnetic gauge strength change in the field around it. There would be light that you would not be able to see where it was because it'd be hitting that object. When it moves, all of a sudden the light can come through and you'd see it, and where it now moves to, the light's blocked there. So photonic observation. The tools that we have to observe things end at the Planck length, for the most part. We can see it by inference beyond that. So is there matter, is there material smaller than an electron? Yes, we get that by inference, and we can see the expression of the movement of that energy in the physical world and three-dimensional world. Doesn't mean that it's just purely spiritual or some vaporous thing. It's just that it's matter that we can't directly observe using the tools that we have in a three-dimensional system. Directly, we can manipulate, we can maneuver it, we can do things, but we do it through other things. And the reason that I say all that is because during eclipses, during these celestial types of events, we can measure those particular field changes and strengths, etc., effects into the physical world. And so a lot of these people that are operating in these spiritual veins, occult systems, etc., there may be some type of knowledge on the spirit world, literally angels, demons, God, whatever you want to say, that understands this and then tries to couch certain events around those events, whether it be a coronation, a death, anything to capture that energy for their own purposes. Even, in the American system, the father of rocketry in the modern era was a guy that was believed he was getting it through, contact with spirits, demons, and was doing spells to gain knowledge from them, to communicate with them, to learn how to, build rockets and stuff like that. And Jet Propulsion Laboratory was built around his history and his understanding. And so, we here in the West, a lot of the stuff that we think we're just getting through normal science and understanding like that, a lot of the key players are trying to get it through communication with spirits, entities, what most of us would call, dark, demons, etc. Not necessarily good guys trying to get action into the physical world from the ethereal other side of the mirror, if you will.
So this energy that can be measured, or this change in physics with the eclipses, are they moments in time as the physical eclipse takes place, or does it leave, a quotient that's permanent until the next change via another, celestial.
Easiest way to kind of visualize it mentally. If I throw a rock in the stream, it diverts the water around that rock. And so in most cases with these eclipses, you're essentially throwing a rock in the stream, and what happens to the water around that rock, it increases its velocity. It races to get around the rock, and then it has to fill a void on the backside of the rock. And so you have all sorts of turbulence. And is the rock totally beneath the water? Is it, above and below and all the way around? Is it partial? Is it total? And where are you at? I don't know. We do live in an electric universe. Is gravity an attraction or pressure? And so people get wound up. If I came to you 150 years ago, even 100 years ago, although some people would have understood it and others wouldn't have, and I had a microwave, and I had a way to power, and I was to take your cup of gruel or stew or whatever, put it in there for a minute and push the button and pull it out, even buttons on the keyboard and the precision of the case that it was in, would look like, otherworldly stuff. I could put a robe on, a cape, makeup, and say the right words. And
oh, we've lost him. We'll wait for him to come back.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Back in the room.
But I could genuflect and I could do something that would make it look like I was doing some big spiritual performance. But the reality is the physics were just the physics. I had something that generates a waveform of a particular length and causes the molecules inside that gruel or stew to vibrate and resonate at a high rate and causes heat. There's no great mystery about it, but you don't understand it because you haven't been taught all the basics to get there. A lot of what's going on here is there is a real physics. And by the way, the other thing is, if you're looking at, say, advanced civilization, some place out, in time away from the current world we live in, or in location, some nearby planetary system or something. If they were just 100 years ahead of us, or 1,000, would they be transferring power on a electric copper cable? Would they be transferring power via laser microwave transmission system, or is there other systems which we couldn't even imagine today that 50 years or 100 years from now is the way you transfer power, energy? So are we even looking in the right places? It's like when we were talking about looking for intelligent life. So we're looking for radio waveforms with big antennas. Well, would some advanced culture send stuff at the speed of light? Are they limited to that, or do they figure out other ways to communicate and transmit? So you're looking in the wrong area for the information. And if you understand that speed of light's not the limit, and you know where you got to look, and eclipses concentrate or obfuscate other things that make it hard to see that signal, then or the effect, then maybe you build stuff around those events. And that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's people following the eclipses around. It's not completely crazy. And then people anticipating and planning even alignments of cities or trying to make a statement even hundreds of years in advance may not be as crazy as it sounds, anticipating what was coming some point in time. So the mysteries around us are unbelievable, where these secret societies have pre-planted with ideas, certain things that they wanted to say and do and build around in anticipation of certain moments. Look, even the birth of Prince William, that was anticipated for hundreds of years. I'm very serious. He was planned around. There was a breeding program. It's called the Knights of the Round Table, where all the families worked together, merging their DNA, planning who was going to align with who in order to have children that had the correct DNA. That's why in this countdown to Prince William's birth, each knight of the round in the order of the Garter is given a number. And what's Prince William's number of being knighted to sit at the round table? Well, he's the 1000th knight in the numbers, gematria. The zero usually doesn't mean anything in most of the systems. You don't count it because it's a nothing. So he's the 1000th knight of the round table? No, he's the one. Like the movie Independence Day, it was a countdown to the one. Okay. And so there's a secret society aspect that was in play for hundreds of years in a breeding program. And what has he got? He's got the Saxe-Coburg-Goethe bloodline, and he's got the Merovingian bloodline through Diana. And all the other bloodlines were reduced down to those two key ones. And then he's the first royal in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, probably all the way back to Cain, because they're the children of the Cains, or kings of the earth. He's the first one, probably all the way back to Cain in their mind, but at least in hundreds of years in other people's calculations, to have the blood of all 13 families of the bloodline families. Why 13? Because it's the 12 Abrahamic lines plus Cain, and 13 bloodlines, and they have the right to rule by blood, is what their belief is. It's a cult. It's a religion, and then they do certain events around celestial events like eclipses. You'll see the royals from different families going to places where eclipses are at to gain power. Look, Prince William was born during an eclipse. Well, how did that happen? It wasn't an accident. That's what Deanna was trying to tell you. She was innocent, naive. She was just a breeder. She didn't even understand her role until she was put in that place. It's very frustrating. And then had to go along. She had pressures from every angle. Go look at it. Read the work of Cal Donnie, Kal, first name and then last name Donnie, Dani, the occult numbers of Prince William. I've mentioned it many times before. Go look at it again. You have Merlins, wizards that have manipulated events to make it look as though it's acts of God to have things occur with exacting precision a certain way. And then they take the energy from those events, from those occurrences, and their ability to manipulate times and seasons and events to their power, like a gardener, plants and cultivates and, does certain things in order to get, a hybrid plant of a particular nature that does certain things, grows in cold or warm environments with lots of water or less, to get just the right combination to suit their purposes. So they're doing the same thing with people. They're doing the same thing with societies. That's what the powerful the elite are doing across the whole planet. They're trying to manipulate the masses and cull the herd and take out the ones that are a problem so they can farm society to do what they want to do. They want to farm their fellow man like slavers did. The ones that'll be the most manipulable and docile and do their will, the ones that are more interesting to them sexually, or even for food. And then the rest of them, they want to, it's a genocidal manipulation to own the future. Who's going to inherit the earth, inherit the world? And if you're naive about it, ignorance is bliss. But right up until you're the sacrifice. So that's the world that we live in. And either you can be blind to it, or you can, there's a scripture that says, those that choose to be ignorant suffer because of it. If you choose, I just don't want to know. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to, it's too complicated. I just want to enjoy life. I just want to, watch my TV show, play my game, go to work and get paid and be able to get food at the grocery store. Those that don't want to be bothered knowing too much, it says they suffer because of it. They don't understand they're being farmed. That's the scary part for us here that do see this, is the extent of the propaganda being used to control and manipulate, and the imminent nature of the moment we're in, where this bridging moment. Can we get through the next 20 or 30 years to the paradise moment that technology can bring to us relatively intact? Or in this advanced technological AI elite moment, will we be cultivated out? Will we be weeded out? Will we become fertilizer for these people out into the generations as they take over the world in their Nazi-esque perfect society mentality, as they take over the world? That's China's the example there. In China, several times over the last couple thousand years, they've killed off the population to the 90th percentile and weeded it down just to certain families in order to control the future. Literally genocide to the 90th percentile. What would genocide in the modern era look like to the 90th percentile? That's what the Georgia Guidestones was all about. Weeding down the human population, where 13 out of 14 people alive must die, and only a half a billion people, 500 million, would remain on the earth to repopulate the earth. That's why it had to be destroyed. We cannot allow them to have this statement in stone and accept it. We will not accept their plan that there should only be 500,000 people on the earth, or 500 million people on the earth, and that's the carrying capacity of the earth, and the rest need to be decided. And to the extent that your listeners and these audiences grasp that this terror moment that we're in, and then realize there is faces behind it. It's not just an AI. There's people pulling the levers with the AI. They're just augmented by soulless machines that are telling them how to weed the earth of the unnecessary people, of which most of your audience fall in that category. And are you going to rage against the machine or not? You going to stand for it? You're just going to accept it? You can leave their monuments in stone against you standing, or are you going to take them on?
Exactly. Talking of all of those types of things, Juan, so something President Trump said, I did a great show just a few days ago with Gene Decode, and President Trump said a phrase that makes
Who
me think of
did you
something
do the show with? Who did you do the
Gene
show with?
Decode. Gene Decode.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And to something President Trump said, he was at I believe it was one of the UFC bouts, and the Nelk boys, they're big YouTubers, they were with him. They were there in the same facility, and he's done shows with them before. They've come to Mar-a-Lago, and he pointed at them and he said, "These guys are monsters." And he said, "You wouldn't, it's hard to believe." And it made me think of usually when me and you talk, one of the phrases you like to use is say, "Well, I'm putting all the monsters in the boxes," like. And so anyway, me and Gene did a great show about a number of things, and he brought to mine and the audience's attention about Abraham Lincoln. And there's a film, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and I've heard of it. I haven't watched it, but I didn't really think too much of it. Anyway, Gene brought to my attention and the audience about how that's actually based on some reality. And then I thought about this with President Trump with the Nelk boys, and he said, because nothing that President Trump says is by mistake, and he points to them and says, "These guys are monsters," and he said, "It's hard to believe, isn't it?" And then just carried on, just right there in front. And then I looked up on YouTube. They've actually commentated on vampires before. They've talked about it. And if you do the numbers on Nelk boys, it comes to 103, which comes to vampires. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I wanted to know if you have any thoughts about that. Gene was saying that there's places around the world with vampires, etc. You talked about the transgender part. You've got Transylvania with Dracula and like the impact, all that stuff. But just some thoughts about that. This is the other thing he put into the mix, which was really fascinating. He said that it goes all the way back to Judas Iscariot. And he said because of what Judas did to Christ with betraying him for the 30 pieces of silver, that's why vampires traditionally are known as being allergic to silver. And I hadn't put any of those pieces together before, but I just wondered if you had any thoughts or commentary on that, on some of the things that Gene had shared with us the other day.
Well, I don't know that tying it to the 30 pieces is exactly right. The silver is a natural antiseptic. That's why it could be used for money. You could have silver and pass it between people, and there could be bacteria, viruses, etc. And on the silver, they die very quickly. And so silver was a preferred coinage for money because of its antiseptic nature. And then you can get it into small quantities for minor transactions, gold for bigger transactions, which also has a monatomic antiseptic nature, but it's actually not as good as silver is. And so, I think that's, the vampires not wanting to be sterilized or whatever with their, demon genes and all that sort of thing. The thing about Judas, Judas was part of this cult, this group that was against the Romans, who had assisted another sect of the Jews in building the temple, rebuilding the temple. And there is actually an interesting correlation to what's going on in the world today that people should slow down and listen for a second here. Think about this. The temple, the Romans kind of supervised the rebuilding of the temple in the time prior to Christ being born. When Christ went to the temple where the Word of God, the Torah, the Mosaic scriptures, and other writings were present and being read to the people and like that in these, weekly services, he did go there. He, considered it the house of God and all the various things. But it is interesting with the sect that was of Judas. They were kind of like the militia crowd or something within the various groups. And they believed that the Messiah had to come to save the Jews from the Romans. And so they were looking for some kind of a military leader to come lead the people in a God-backed campaign to destroy the occupying armies out of the area. And Judas, the others were fishermen. They were people from around the area of Galilee, and Judas was actually from a little different area. And so he came from a different kind of a mentality. When Christ came from having resurrected, what's his name from the dead there?
Lazarus.
Lazarus joined the entourage, and this is 40 days out of Jerusalem on this walk back to Jerusalem. Messengers came to this traveling entourage that's around Jesus, arguably several dozen at least, probably 1 to 500 people. It just kept growing, this caravan, because of all the miracles and things like that would come and walk along with him. So messengers came from Lazarus because he was a frequent guest at Lazarus' house. They were close friends, and told him that he was very ill, near death. And they thought that Christ would come running to help his friend Lazarus. Instead, he continued at a modest pace, headed towards Jerusalem, and came to Lazarus's city. And they said, "You're too late. You're too late. He's already been dead for 3 days. You slowpoke. If you'd only come, I mean, you were such good friends with him. Why didn't you hurry up?" And Christ hadn't hurried. He hadn't, he tarried along the way. He got there and he says, "Well, where's he buried?" "Oh, he's in the tomb." "Roll back the rock." No, don't roll back the rock. It stinks. He's been dead for 3 days. He's going to stink to high heaven. Are you kidding? And but Christ has him roll back the rock, and then he cries out, "Lazarus, come forth!" And then everybody's shocked. Out of the tomb comes Lazarus, dressed in his, they had wrapped up like a mummy, and it'd be an amazing Hollywood scene. And he's resurrected. And he has this, no doubt, people have near-death experiences. What do you suppose Lazarus' near-death experience was like? What kind of stories would he have to tell? Well, he joins the entourage on their walk back to Jerusalem, where Christ had been a couple times before for the Passover. And along the way, even, by the way, and I'm going somewhere with this, so I want to just kind of get people in the right mindset. And people might not have heard me say this before. Along the way, he was so direct in talking to the disciples that he said that he would have to suffer and die at the hands of the Romans and of the Jews in Jerusalem, etc., and that he would be, dead and resurrected himself. And they didn't understand what he was talking about completely, but at least one of them understood. Peter said, "No way! We won't let it happen. I won't. You be tormented and suffer and die. I'll protect you." And Christ had to rebuke him. No, it's necessary. It's part of God's plan that this is what has to happen, and you're not going to get in the way of it. And he was very direct with the apostles about what was going to happen. They were going there, and there was going to be drama. And but Lazarus was there to talk about the afterlife and things like that, because he's traveling along with the entourage. Then when he gets to Jerusalem, he comes in on the donkey. Uh, you look at Judas, he's expecting that Christ is going to come in as this conquering hero if he's the true Messiah, because he had a preconceived understanding of what the scriptures said about a conquering Messiah coming to destroy all the enemies of the children of Abraham who were promised the land, the Jews, if you will. And his preconceived idea of a conquering general to come wipe out the enemies didn't include a guy sitting on a donkey and riding into Jerusalem with people throwing palm fronds down on the street and hailing him as a king. With the miracles and everything else, he expected angels to come out of the air with flaming swords, destroy all their enemies, and they're gonna have some great apocalypse, and then he'd sit on the throne, and all the other nations of the earth would cower. And then on top of that, Christ went to the temple then the next day, hung out, watched observed everything going on at the temple. And depending on which account, whether you're reading the biblical accounts or some of the extra biblical accounts and letters from people from the time, because we have lots of information that's out there that's not necessarily the Bible, but that give you kind of a picture of what those events were like. And Christ on this next day comes in, and it says he fashioned a whip, and he observed the money changers in their business all day. And then when he completed fashioning this whip, he goes into this area of all the vendors where they had like a bazaar, a market right outside the temple. And the Passover is when you would bring sacrifices and offer them to God for sin. So we know that, for example, going back to the Garden of Eden, and we're going somewhere with this about a present day situation that everybody needs to kind of understand about it. For those that may not have thought this through, or even if you have, I want you to kind of get your mind in the right place of how this fits even today. As Christ comes in and he casts out all the market people, the vendors, the people that were buying and selling animals. And you'd come in and you'd bring your lamb that you'd been growing all year, and it's going to be a sacrifice to God for sin, to make you right with God. And it's symbolic. Everybody knows it's symbolic, by the way. They know that the lamb cannot reconcile them with God directly. You can't give a lamb to pay for whatever offense you've made to God. It's symbolic. Going all the way back to Cain and Abel. When Adam and Eve sinned, Eve was beguiled, but Adam knew what he was doing when he sinned, when he turned against God. And so, because he was smarter, he was older. When they sinned, what did God do? As he expelled them from the garden, he killed animals and he clothed them in the dead animal's carcass. He gave them a covering, and he didn't give them fig leaves. They were there naked, and grabbed fig leaves and says, how'd you know you were naked? What happened? They lost their cloth of light, whatever it was that their understanding was prior to that. So he clothed them in dead animal skins, dead carcasses, and they left, were cast out of the garden. So there was animal death right from the beginning, and they were clothed in death. And you asked the question, by the way, did they eat dead animals in the garden? What was their diet like in the garden? They had anything that had a seed in it. They had the fruits, they had the vegetables, whatever, they wanted of the food, but they were herbs, plant life. And then outside of the garden,
I didn't recall the question, but
they
it's a good
were,
question. Yeah.
meat and other things. In fact, part of the whole point is that life out of the garden was somehow manipulated different than it was inside that thing. The nature of the world, the way they had to interact with the world was completely different. And so when Cain brought his offering, he brought an offering of food, vegetables. When Abel brought his offering to God, it was of his flock, his lambs, and he made a sacrificial offering to God that involved death. And it was symbolic because the payment for sin, which was going against God, was death. It was symbolically, if you're separated from God, God's source of life, if you are separated from the source of life, then you experience death. Death is separation from God. There was some bigger thing going on here. So somehow reconciling ourselves with God was putting something else dead in there to pay the price. And the understanding to Adam was that at some point God himself would provide an adequate sacrifice to pay for the sin in the garden, and then Adam could be reconciled with God. And all of the sacrifices in between were merely symbolic. You were showing faith that God would one day provide a true sacrifice that would be adequate to pay for the penalty of sin, which God had said is death, and God, being perfect, couldn't change whatever the penalty was. It had to be fulfilled. It couldn't be bypassed. A price had to be paid. And so, but then God put on flesh like we put on a coat and came and walked among us. So he was born of a woman, and that's the Christ figure, the Messiah, to reconcile and put us back in the right relationship with God. So here Christ comes in, and the Jews, including Judas, were looking for a conquering Messiah to reconcile the people with God somehow, and to put all their enemies under their foot, the Romans and any other, people from outside the area that weren't children of the promise, Abraham, to inherit this holy land, etc. What's Christ do? He turns on the very people that Judas thinks are going to be the most favored, the temple people, the people that are running the government of the region under the Romans' noses, and that they're going to be part of this salvation of the nation as the Jews and the temple leaders all come together around this conquering Messiah figure, this king figure, and the angels come out of heaven and uncloak themselves and drive the Romans from their midst and destroy all the Gentile heathen from the area and purify the land and take it all over. So when Christ drives the temple leaders out of the area, calls them a den of thieves and murderers, and cleanses the temple of all this bazaar of vendors buying and selling animals, and telling people, oh, your animal is not perfect, and go talk to my brother-in-law, he'll sell you one that's perfect, he'll take this one on trade-in, but yours isn't good enough, and running a racket, if you will. Christ says that they're blocking the people from true worship of doing something with God, reconciling themselves with God, a real spiritual experience as opposed to just this manipulated thing. And he destroys their business operation. Shoot, the biggest business day of the year, it's like, the lead up to Christmas is the Passover week. at the temple, and all the families that live around the temple and run the temple operations make the big bucks. They're breeding animals and doves and lambs and cattle and everything else, and all the pilgrimage of people coming into the city for the great, festival of Passover, like at Christmas or something, and they show up and they're going to make the whole year's wages, and it's the culmination of the whole operation. And Christ just destroyed that. He just dismantled that in a short while, overturned all the tables, all their money's thrown all over the place, drove them out of the area with the whip. And what else did he do? He freed all the animals, turned them loose. Think about it. He didn't just, overturn their, coinage and everything else. All these guys scrambled to get their money, turned all the animals loose that were there for slaughter to be sacrificed. In some of the accounts, it says he stood in the doorway and wouldn't let anyone in or out of the temple area where the animals were. And as he did this and had some participation by other people that were present. And there's some symbology there, no doubt, because why? Because he was supposed to be the sacrifice. And that's what he told the apostles. He was going to be sacrificed like the sacrificial lamb. He was literally saying that he was God's sacrifice. That's why the Jews took such offense to him at different times. You're saying you're God? You're saying that you're God's direct messenger? This is crazy. This is blasphemy. So then, and this is the season we're in, by the way, the day that celebrates that day is Sunday the 24th. And with all these things that week thereafter is all these events, Palm Sunday, Christ coming into the city, and then over the next couple days, disrupting the city, turning it upside down. So then you come back to Judas. After Christ destroyed their business, I mean, the whole year, whole family operations are built around, and all the temple's revenue for running a temple, even the Roman soldiers and garrisons that are there, because you have this huge influx of people that come in from all the region to that little concentrated area for the Passover, and they don't want an uprising. They don't want a revolution. So they're there to maintain the peace. And Christ just broke the peace, caused total disruption, which is going to get back to Caesar, and he's going to be pissed when he finds out. Because the guy that was running the area before Pilate got kicked out because he couldn't maintain the peace, because you had a bunch of people like Judas's clans that wanted to overthrow the Romans and take over the region. So after Christ disrupts it, who do the temple people go to try and restore order? They understand money. The one sane guy that's kind of in their crowd is Judas. And Judas is the one that, for he carried the bag. He was the treasurer. He does all of the money handling for the apostles. They approach him. They say, look, your master has lost his marbles. And whatever people think about him and all his miracles and everything else, whatever the trick is that he's doing, he can't be, the good guy that you think he is. Look, you're traveling with him. You know the secrets. You know how to heal people and all the stuff he's showing you what to do. But you can't just disrupt the temple operations like this. This is the way that we protect our families and what the kingdom of God's going to be built on. We just need peace for the rest of the week. We just need to get things back under control. We'll help your operations out, okay? In fact, you'd be a great leader for these people. They look up to you because you're the one that carries the bag. They trust you with the money. The other apostles would probably follow you if there's a problem. So, but you need money. We understand that to run an operation like this and keep everybody happy and keep it moving. we'll give you 30 pieces of silver, enough to manage your entourage and keep it going for a year. And in the meantime, all we need you to do is to direct the Roman soldiers to your master so they get the right guy, pick him up. We're going to put him in jail for a few days till the temple operations are done, maintain peace and order, and then we'll help you out. You could help lead these people through. You're a great leader. You could do this. You understand the military side. You understand the Roman threat. And they talked Judas into it. Now, how do we know all that? We know it from other writings, but even in the scriptures, when they took Christ and then they talked about they wanted to get him crucified, Judas went back to the same people who the silver and says, hey, wait a minute. Look, I was good with arresting him and bringing peace in the neighborhood, kind of working through this with the disciples and all that. I was good with that, but nobody's talking about killing somebody here. I didn't agree to that or crucifying him. Look, he's not that guy. Judas had been embarrassed a bit for various reasons amongst the other apostles by Christ on several accounts. The gal that came to Christ and anointed him with a precious oil, very valuable oil, about a year's worth of wages. Judas had said, why would you let this woman break this jar of expensive ointment and just pour it over your body? That was wasteful. Shouldn't you have had her give it to me? I'd go sell it, or she could go sell it, and then take the money and put it in the treasury, put it in my bag to support the church operations, the entourage's operations. And Christ said she did this, anointing him for burial. And it was a beautiful act before God that Judas didn't understand, which he didn't. He was driven by the money and how are we going to run this business here? He didn't see the spiritual side of this thing. But all of a sudden, when it became real and they're talking about killing Christ, crucifying him, he goes back to the people he made a deal with and says, here, take your 30 pieces of silver back. I wasn't good with that. And they says, no, deal's done. It's your silver. We don't want it. It's tainted money now. It's blood money. And you've received it. It's yours. And Judas, somewhere in there across the sands of time, did he repent? Did he only feel sorry for himself? Was he, what kind of guilt crossed his mind? Was he killing himself because he was no longer looked at the same way by the other apostles who realized he betrayed Christ? Was his betrayal understood and discovered by the other apostles? Did he try to pass himself off as the new leader right up until all of a sudden it's obvious they're going to try and kill Christ? Judas goes out and he kills himself. And the Jews, the temple people, took the 30 pieces of silver and bought the land where he had been killed, probably from one of their other buddies. That was this became a potter's grave area. People that could afford to be buried other places would be buried there. And it was said for generations afterwards that when you went by there was a stench in that area that just hung, like people talk about demon presence and like that, and a stench, a cold will come over an area. And the belief was that it was occupied by filthy, stinking, demonic presences for a long time afterward, because that was what had gotten into Judas's soul, his being, to cause him to betray the Christ, the Son of God. Now, all of that, Tom, to get to this current moment and what's going on in the world right this second, coming up on Palm Sunday. When I was down in Argentina the other day, the president hey, sorry about that. I had a call came in. When I was down in Argentina the other day, the president of Argentina, who just took office, he went over to Israel and spoke over there, was asked by their friends to come over and speak. And he made a statement that was quite, interesting. He talked about how that sacrifices were about to resume at the temple area for the Jews. Now think about that. We're about to resume sacrifices. Do I have you there, Tom, or did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Let's see. Well, I don't see. I just want to make sure that I got you there, bro.
Yeah, I'm here.
Did I lose you, or are you still here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Here, let me stop and I'll restart here. See if we can get you back.
Okay. I think I was frozen for a little while there. They'll be back. The crucifixion of Christ, 262. Death is separation from God, 262. The crucifixion, 164. 5th of November, 164. Crucifix, 93. Crucifixion, 131. John F. Kennedy, 131. Crucify, 85. Silver. Crucifying, 115. 11/5. November 5th. Excuse me. May 11th. November 5th. Have a look. Is he back? Not yet. Not yet. He'll be back in. So who's listening? Where is everyone from? Put in the comments where you're from. Any questions for Juan? Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the connection that Gene made the other day with Judas, with vampires, with punishment that God gave him. Lots of things. Nothing's quite as it seems. In fact, I'm discovering that pretty much nothing is as it seems. That's quite a thought, isn't it? Imagine that. Everything that we thought was the case is probably not. That's really quite a statement, but it's quite mind-blowing. Yeah. Oh well. The universe is changing. It's upgrading. The awakening's happening. And we're on the ride. We're on the ride. We're here. So we'll discover as more time goes on, we'll discover more truths, more things. I do think though about truth. Is it all coming from us? Are we observing it? Are we manifesting it? I think we are at some level. In fact, I know we are. But then it's like the paradox of how does that blend into everything else, to this global story. Here he is. Here's Juan. He's back in the room. Yep, he's joining. He's still joining. So it might be a Wi-Fi connection for him. Oh, he's just gone. You're going to try again. Oh, hang on. Where'd he go? Here he is. Juan is connecting to audio. Okay. That's good. Hey, buddy.
Couldn't get it to read.
I can see the palm of your hand now.
Got there.
I can see the palm of your hand.
Let's see here. Let's try to get this sorted out.
Cool.
Hold on. Well, let's get it fixed. Hold on.
All right. Take your time.
There.
Okay, I can see just a window pane.
Are you there, Tom?
I'm here, Juan. Yep. That's good. I can see the boots.
All right. Yeah, you can edit that part out. All right. All right.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, you just edit that out and let me continue on.
Yeah.
Say
There you
again?
go. Oh, we're ready. I mean, it was just, I did a little bit of commentary and then you reconnected, but everything was okay. So, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Anyway, let me just finish what I was trying to say there. So, what transpired was that the president of Argentina went over to Israel, and in the course of his conversations in Israel, he's talking about how sacrifices are about to begin again up on the Temple Mount. Now, think about this. They're going to start sacrificing animals at the temple in Jerusalem. It's going to be a huge, monstrous public spectacle. Think about that. What is the understanding or impression of people around the world going to be when they see a huge spectacle of animals being brought to the temple on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, whatever, to be sacrificed and make a big deal out of it? How are we gonna react to that? And the beginning point is when they have to have the red heifer. There's a whole ceremony around that to, have certain triggers that are put in place that have to be done to, make it legitimate, etc., based on the Mosaic law and all sorts of things. Okay, how is the world going to react to the resumption of a stream of sacrificial animals going to the Temple Mount? And by the way, the question also is it going to be at the site where the old temple